With Psychonauts 1 and Rhombus of Ruin out of the way, it is officially time to move on to the sequel. In the last episode of this series, Dr. Caligosto Loboto was the primary focus. His childhood and neurological trauma was explored. Even though the missing compass has been returned to him, the Mad Doctor has not yet fully healed. As mentioned before, Loboto is the ultimate victim of the franchise, as more than one individual has wounded his psyche. To understand this more, let's get into Lobotos Labyrinth. When we last saw the Mad Dentist, he was in the Rhombus of Ruin and had abducted the Grand Head of the Psychonauts. After the team neutralized this threat, it was suspected that Loboto was merely a mercenary and not the mastermind behind this event. In order to uncover his third party's identity, Sasha created a mental construct with the hopes of manipulating their captive into revealing this information. Mental constructs can be simply defined as a set of ideas or beliefs we hold. More specifically, they are unconscious programs that influence how our minds react to external stimuli. One construct of Loboto's involves the association between the problems of the mind and dentistry. Everything he perceives in the external world is filtered through the lens of his surgical obsession. Within the setting of Psychonauts, a visualization of these constructs can be considered the mental worlds that Raz visits. What Sasha does here is artificially create a new construct, one that involves Loboto seeing the Psychonauts as colleagues instead of enemies. This conflicts with his normal perception of them. In the mental vault Psychonauts ruin everything, they appear to be ruthless invaders, individuals who delight in ruining his medical practice. A series of anarchists hell-bent on destruction. By creating this false construct, Sasha causes him to react differently to them. By dangling a tropical vacation before his eyes, he instills a sense of desire in the hopes Loboto will rat at his boss to attain it. This construct quickly falls apart when he realizes what is happening. The root of the problem is that there is another pre-existing construct that is much more powerful. Instead of desire for a vacation, a different emotion is in charge: fear. Fear is one of the most powerful emotions, and for most people, it can usurp control of their decision-making. As we will learn, this is the basis of Loboto's problems in this world. But let's get back to the collapsing construct. As Loboto's mind becomes more aware of itself, the original construct returns little by little. This is helped along by one of his mental projections. Two versions of him exist here. One takes on the Doctor personality, the other is a patient. One is the passive victim being influenced by others. The Doctor actively searches for anything that needs to be cleaned out, trying to remove any influence of Sasha's construct. Right after the Dr. Loboto begins to take a look at the patient Loboto, we see our first censor appear. The foreign intrusions in his mind are interpreted as plaque or infections of the mouth. As the dentist begins to clean, the censors appear and attempt to wash Raz and Oleander from the mind. These two mental figures showcase Loboto's inner process of brushing them away. It is important to note that during Rhombus of Ruin, Loboto's mind did not have any censors. This is an indicator that he was indeed insane at the time. However, now censors can be found everywhere. Some form of rationality has returned after Raz's first intrusion. The compass being back in its proper place has changed something in his internal world. Two other enemy types make their debut here: regrets and doubts. The former being defined as a negative conscious or emotional reaction to personal past acts and behaviors. The latter is defined as a feeling of uncertainty or lack of conviction for something yet to occur. The simple presence of these enemies informs us that he isn't as irrational as he first appeared. A complexity exists behind those multicolored eyes. It tells us that he still has reservations about what he is involved in, not a true believer, but going along with the madness anyway. The reason for this is discovered as soon as Raz slides into a portion of his mind covered with motivational posters. While motivation is generally seen as a positive thing, people can be motivated to engage in negative behavior as well. It is defined as a process which initiates, guides, and maintains goal-oriented behavior. These posters do have an intended goal in mind, and certainly initiates and maintains a certain behavior, to ensure Loboto remains silent and never gives up the identity of his abuser, because that is exactly what this mystery individual is, an abuser. It is common in cases of abuse that the victim does not speak up about it. Some refuse to identify their abuser or even pretend that the abuse is not happening in the first place. The two primary reasons for this is fear and codependency. For Loboto, these posters indicate a fear of reprisal from his abuser. At the end of the level, we witness his terror firsthand at being forced to look upon the shade of Maligula. In the case of schoolyard bullying, fear of the abuser may cause the child to never speak up about what is happening. When asked by a teacher or a counselor, they may remain silent for fear their abuse will only get worse. Codependency is also common in physical and psychological abuse cases. These generally form when there is an imbalance of power in a relationship. Children from an abusive home may feel unwanted. As they grow, an unconscious desire can develop, causing them to do anything to maintain relationships. This includes unconsciously finding someone to fill the role of the abuser. Because there is an imbalance of power, this individual will do anything to maintain this abusive relationship because it is better than being alone. This can go so far as to assisting or protecting the abuser, as we see with Dr. Loboto. Fear and codependency is a severely unhealthy combination. As an anecdote, I'll point to a real-life case of domestic abuse related to me by the officers involved. Trigger warning here. A woman calls 911 requesting help because her husband has become physically violent. By the time the two officers arrived, her arm was broken and she was cut in multiple places. The abuser would not back down and was subdued by force in the attempt to protect the woman. At that time, she began attacking the officer, screaming to leave her husband alone. After the situation settled out, she called the sheriff's department and reported that two men broke into her house and was assaulting her husband. In her desperate desire to protect her abuser, she didn't even notice the two men were the sheriff's deputies. By the time the trial came around, she retracted her statement from the dispatch call, claiming that her husband never abused her. She would sit there in the courtroom, cast on her broken arm, while blowing kisses to her abuser. This is one of many real-life stories I've been told by those who've experienced it firsthand. For those who have seen a previous video in this playlist about Fred Bonaparte, this behavior pattern can be thought of as an extreme form of learned helplessness. While this anecdote is an extreme case, it points out just how powerful the force exerted over an abuse victim can be. Dr. Loboto has had his internal mind completely plastered with fear-inducing motivations. Fear somehow planted into his head by the shadowy figure we witness at the end. While I would not say that the doctor has a codependent relationship, it is remarkable how amenable he is to obeying the will of others. Between Coach Oleander, the mysterious figure, or even Sasha, his mind is easily manipulated to serve the goals of stronger minds. Dr. Loboto is not beyond saving, though. We never witness him give up his boss. However, we can presume Sasha uncovered the information, as he states near the end of the game. While still inside Lobotos Labyrinth, the gameplay and level design gives us a visual representation of how to help him. In the room with the posters, Lily teaches Raz the pyrokinesis ability. The only way to progress through the level is to burn away the motivational posters, literally to destroy the mental motivations that guide Loboto to negative behavioral patterns. Right after gaining access to this ability, Lily cheerfully suggests that we burn down all the posters. If this world is a mental construct, then altering the world will alter the mind. By removing all of these negative motivations, maybe Caligosto Loboto will be rid of his overwhelming fear. By the end of the game, Raz only briefly encounters the Doctor, so it is hard to get a read on any personality changes. But if we ever do get Psychonauts 3, I'll be very interested to gauge his disposition. Maybe even have a third round of entering his mind and seeing what else we can do to help him heal. Thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed, please drop a like and subscribe to receive updates on future uploads. If you would like to help support the channel, a Patreon has been set up and the link is in the description below. Have a great day and peace be with you all.